All right, so getting right into the next part of this, and I'm gonna do another video here. I left the last video with the part of saying that you really got to have quality people, your full-time people out at one of these places, and there's a lot of reasons for it. And not the least of which is you know you're likely to only have like 1 out of 5 beds at a survival retreat place. It's actually you got somebody living there full time. Especially during good economic times. And you want to make sure that the people out there, they have a fulfilling life, they're keeping an eye on things, they're quality people that are capable of doing it. And I'm not just saying, whether it's somebody who would spend all day drunk, but a lot of times the people who are actually keeping an eye on a survival retreat have very limited capability on being able to secure it because they're old. And for that matter, you really need to have things set up for the early 20s people that are starting families. You gotta have what I call family infrastructure. And it's not just homeschooling, because I think it's a very rare thing that a 23 to 25-year-old could actually educate a 6 to 7-year-old child. I don't think that's very common. Not unless you're dealing with somebody who's pretty darn genius to begin with, and on their end. If you've got some more experienced people, you already have some college-educated people in their 30s or 40s, especially when it comes to educating teenagers, I think that's going to be a little more appropriate. But when you set these places up, you have to have infrastructure for young families. It's critically important. The other thing is we've got a lot of the population aging out. We've got reproduction numbers for a lot of the population isn't really sustainable right now. And I think I don't need to explain which demographic right now has the lowest repopulation numbers. I'm not going to get into that here, but it's a problem that needs to be addressed and it needs to be solved. And it doesn't get solved by a bunch of 50 and 60 something veterans who live on their VA check and want to, shoot anybody that crosses the fence line because there might be refugees coming. Not going to work that way. You gotta have infrastructure that is family friendly, especially for the younger people. Whether or not you have a defense infrastructure in addition to that, or that's intertwined with that, that's one issue to address. You gotta have, some little school buildings, some little places for that. You gotta be able to have access to some things for the kids. You gotta have access to pediatric medical care. You gotta have that stuff available. You gotta have access to jobs and food to make sure that the breadwinners for those little families, that they can handle things and that they're not going to become disenchanted and just go back to the city and then put their kids at the mercy of the system. So don't discount that stuff. And it's also one of the reasons why I don't really support having a really high buy-in requirement for these types of places. Now, on the Survival Realty website, there's a lot of stuff here that's $250,000, $125,000. That's not going to. And a bunch of these places really are not survival friendly, and they're definitely. What happens when you call somebody and you say, "Listen, I got 2 families. They're all in their early 20s, and we're going to need jobs for these guys. We got to, it's got to be a package deal, not a $250,000, $300,000 cash only purchase on a retirement home." That's not going to work. You gotta have the infrastructure for these people. Now here's kind of a neat one. It's 2.5 acres, but on that you gotta have other people around that can help support that. Now there's a guy who's come up with a plan for a relatively complete community, and this is the Citadel, the 3%er Citadel. He's been through a lot of controversy. There's been a lot of controversy over the fact that he's a convicted felon, and he's talking about us and we on a manufacturing plant. But the thing is, I think that's one of the other people there. Okay. John Wesley Walls has refused to endorse this particular situation because the guy, one of the leaders in this project, is a convicted felon. You know, I looked at some stuff, other stuff that was posted online about what this guy's criminal record was, and I'm a little bit neutral on it. Yeah, I would say, yeah, I would be a little bit hesitant because of the nature of the convictions to have this guy in charge. But would I have him over for dinner? Would I have him included in a place? I would think maybe so. You know, you got to look at these things on a case-by-case basis. And if you're going to be so incredibly exclusive about a project, I think you need to do some soul searching about bigotry and rehabilitation, and whether or not you know, your idea of a dream America is really in America. Because America, you know, a lot of America, especially the Western states, was established by people who were considered criminals elsewhere, and came for the freedom and a second chance and another chance to establish something in life, and made well for themselves and helped found the country. So I am, you know, I'm not necessarily in a position where I can refuse to endorse this guy. I think if people make their decision with open eyes, they can make their decision. And if they really don't like this guy's situation, they don't like the 3% Citadel thing, there might be some other things like it that are going to work better. I looked at this and I thought, you know, it's really interesting. It's just not one that I'm personally going to join up. But I wouldn't be against somebody else doing it. Now, remember what I was talking about. But the thing is, this guy's got a lot of good ideas. And I don't think you should just steal the ideas and then throw the guy out. So, you know, there's different stuff on this. Other people are looking at these tumbleweed tiny houses, trailer park type stuff. The thing is, with these tiny houses and all that, you don't need construction permits to build them. You can look at what the maximum building size is in a lot of these locations and understand you don't need construction permits. You can cut down on the cost of production on these little tumbleweed houses by not doing them on a trailer frame. You can do them on skids. Try to find a side view of one of these things. You can do these on skids where they would have to be picked up by a big forklift to be moved around, and then just put them on concrete blocks or a little concrete foundation. And that also gives you a little bit more leeway on size. Some of these things are artificially expensive because they've been made with a lot of really fine cabinet work inside. And if you skip some of the finery on the cabinet work, you can definitely do lower production costs of these things. In fact, just substituting the actual board lumber in there for cabinet grade plywood, you can reduce a lot of costs. And don't forget, if you design a community around these things, you've also got community buildings that aren't going to be nearly as cramped. So remember what I was talking about, having the survival infrastructure in place at the survival retreats. The next video I'm going to cover is what kind of survival infrastructure is required to actually increase your retreat population. And remember, survival, especially in harder times, is going to require you to have population. You got to have quality population. Got to be able to take care of the people. If you can't take care of their needs, things are going to go badly no matter what. Even if they have what they feel are a lot of wants that you've taken care of, if their needs are not met, it's just going to fall apart. And the needs are certain types of infrastructure at any redoubt or retreat location. And we're going to go over that again in the next series of videos.